Have you ever wondered how much happiness actually costs? Well, there's a little bit of science behind it apparently, but today we're going to look at two case studies of two different people who both used their money in a way that made them happy and how drastically different their worlds looked. And we're going to look at how these decisions that we make with our money, how we spend on our happiness, can have a monumental impact on our financial lives now and in the years to come. Hey, we are Bob and Linda Lotich, authors of Simple Money, Rich Life, and this is actually the Korean version that just came out. And so if you read Korean, that's available now. But you are listening to the SeedTime Money podcast, in case you don't know that already. And we're in the middle of a 40-week series where we're sharing our 40-week checklist of all the action steps, strategies, and biblical insights that we use to go from paycheck to paycheck living to reaching our biggest financial goal of giving away $1 million and living a life of true financial freedom. And so today, I want to start off with a story that really impacted my life. And this is the Mexican Fisherman story. I originally found it in Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. It's been circling all over the internet ever since, but I just want to read it to you real quick. So an American investment banker was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village late one morning when a small boat docked. Inside the boat was a fisherman who had already caught several large fish. The American complimented the fisherman on the fish and asked how long it took him to catch them. The fisherman replied, "Only a little while." The American then asked, why didn't he stay out longer and catch more fish? The Mexican said he had caught plenty enough to provide for his family's needs for quite a while and even give some fish to others in the village. The American then asked, but what do you do with the rest of your time? And so the Mexican fisherman said, well, I sleep late, I play with my kids, I take siestas with my wife, I stroll into the village where I sip some wine, I play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life. The American scoffed. He said, I'm an experienced businessman and I can help you. He said, you should spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could have a fleet of fishing boats, open up your own cannery, control all the distribution, he said. Of course, you would need to leave this small coastal town and move to a bigger city to run your expanding enterprise. The Mexican fisherman asked, but how long will all that take? To which the American replied, 15, 20 years or so. And then the Mexican fisherman says, but what then? So the American laughed and said, well, that's the best part. When the time's right, you could sell your company and you can become very rich. You'd make millions. Millions? Then what? Asked the Mexican. The American said, then you could retire. You could move to a small coastal fishing village where you could sleep late, play with your kids, take siestas with your life, and stroll to the village where you'd sip wine and play guitar with your amigos. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, this story hit me. I've always been kind of ambitious. And for me personally, I don't know, it was something about just reminding me, what are the things I'm actually chasing? What are the things that actually bring happiness in my life? And could they be attained a whole lot easier than maybe society makes us think?
Yeah.
I think these are really good questions to ask.
Simplifying, right?
Yeah. I mean, but just getting really clear on what are the things that make you happy? And in many times, the fastest path to that is something else. And one thing, again, from Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek that I remember was how one of his concepts from the book that we've kind of taken for our lives for the last decade is this idea of mini retirements, where why save up retirement for, age 65 or later? Why not try to spread that out through life? And so we've been, for the last 11, 12 years, taking 1 month sabbatical every year, which I think is kind of our version of that.
Right.
And anyway, and it's just a way to enjoy some of these things of life, and for me, one of the biggest ones, when I'm asked that question, what would you do if we won the lottery and you had to do no work for money? I think one of those things, I would just sit and read books. It's one of my favorite things to do, and the truth is, it's I don't need to be a multimillionaire to do that,
Right.
I don't need to be super wealthy to do that.
Right.
And, but it takes intentionality to just bring that thing that, into my life more,
Right. Well, and also just breaking down the ideas and the standards of what we've kind of been told we should be doing with our time.
Yeah. Because that's a big challenge, part of it,
Right. I mean, I think that's huge because so much of our society is telling us to hustle all the time.
Yep.
And it's why? What's What's the goal behind it? I mean, we really do need to answer that question for ourselves. And for some people, there is really something to do, but surely not all of us.
Yeah. Well, and there's two different things I want to talk to you about. So the first one is the point of all this is not to chase happiness. Okay. So we are talking about that, but ultimately the point is, how do we chase Jesus? You know, and that is how a life is best lived, I believe.
Yeah.
But within that, there are decisions that all of us are making every single day that, if we're honest, are trying to optimize for our happiness in one way or another, whether it's the stores that we shop at, the things that we buy, you know, like we're making decisions based on, I would rather buy that clothes because I think it'll make me more happy. I would rather live in that house, have that car because I think it'll make me, we're doing this all the time. So if we're doing it all the time anyway, we might as well just, you know, think about how we can do it better, you know.
Right.
But ultimately, the main goal here is how do we chase Jesus and let happiness be a byproduct, you know. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I also want to just, in case anybody's thinking, well, this kind of contradicts what you talk about in the book, the idea of make all you can. And I don't think it does. I actually think it's a matter of balance. Because like the concept that, you know, we're talking about in the book comes from a formula from John Wesley, where he said, you know, I earn as much as I can, I reduce my expenses as much as I can, and then I give as much as I can. And so that was his motivation. He wanted to be able to give as much as he can and make as big of an impact in the kingdom of God as he could. And so that was his motivation for earning as much as he can. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with being a small fisherman in a small coastal town, you know, if that's what God's called you to do. But if he has called you to turn it into something larger and you don't, that's what we're after.
Right.
You know, and just seeing what's possible and what God is able to do through that. There's a place for small business and solopreneurship, and there's a place, I believe, for big business. And I think we need more believers running big businesses, doing it the right way, because I don't think it's done right very often.
Very often, yeah.
And I would love to see that change. And so that's part of like what we're trying to do with the book, and really everything we talk about is I want to encourage and inspire believers to think beyond and bigger than their worldview. And again, this is just from my own experience, like what I've needed to do and what God has kind of pushed me in.
Yeah.
To expand my vision beyond, you know, what I came into this world believing, you know?
Yeah, and we were just talking about this the other day, about asking the Lord, what are the tools that we need for the next phase of life? We were talking about it in the context of our home. Like when we buy our next home, what's the tool we need, rather than what fits our wants the best?
Yeah, well, yeah, what is...
And so... but this can expand to every single thing. Like, we are stewards of what God has entrusted us with, and that includes our lives.
Yeah.
Like what we are doing, our livelihood and our jobs and our homes, cars, etc.
Yeah.
And just our purchases.
And kind of thinking through this a little bit, and I should have said this a little bit better before, but like, I think at the end of the day, if the goal is to maximize happiness or joy, like I think it's simply found in obeying him and following, being tethered to Jesus and doing that. So I think that's the short, simple answer for everything that we're talking about here. But again, like within that, I would like to break this down into the nitty gritty on some things, because I want to read something from another book. It was a fantastic book, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, what I want you to do is pause the podcast, okay? And I want you to list out 10 things that bring you joy that you spend money on, okay?
So if they're driving or something, you just want them to like say them out loud?
That's fine. Think of it, whatever. You know, but if you're not, you can write this down. I want to take you through this exercise, okay? So write down 10 things that bring you joy that you would spend money on, okay? So this could be your favorite snack, your favorite vacation spot that you go to, whether it's coffee with friends, whether it's buying shoes, whether it's golfing, whatever. Like, doesn't really matter. You name it. And so go ahead and pause that. We already did this exercise. And so I'm going to pull out my list. Give me to read it.
I've got my list as well.
All right. Do you want me to go first, or you want to go first? And we'll go ahead and read our lists just so you guys
You can go first.
All right. So mine. So the first thing is going to prayer retreats. Is something I really, really am loving. and enjoying. Cost me a little bit of money going away for 2 days, camping or going to a hotel, whatever the thing might be. Pie Town Tacos. It's a local taco shop I absolutely love.
You got real specific with this.
Well, no, I'm okay getting. I mean,
Okay.
that's the point. Beach vacations, specifically 30A. We really enjoy that. I
really
love
enjoy
spending money on that. Peaches in June. Like I just don't. There's nothing better, right? Peaches in season. It's God's gift to us. It's amazing. Getting coffee or tea with Linda. Something I really enjoy doing. Or driving around in our Jeep with the doors off. Like
Love that.
specifically like on a summer night. Like I just absolutely love it.
Oh, yeah, while the sun's going down.
Yeah, it's just so good. Reading early in the morning, like I was saying before. Trips with the kids, like specifically like one-on-one trips. We've been doing that the last few years where each one of us, Linda and I, will take one kid, go for a trip for an overnight or 2 nights.
They're pretty simple right now,
simple.
But they might get more elaborate as
But
the kids get older.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just really good. Pizza night. Every Friday night we do pizza night, and it just feels like, I just like it. Feels
Just
good.
like it.
You know? And then Topo Chico, because it's
Topo
just,
Chico.
I just love it. Anyway, what are yours?
Mine are a lot more general. So I love spending money on flowers. I would say buying either cut flowers or like buying plants that will grow flowers. I like either one. I'm good with either one. Books.
Yeah.
I love getting a recommendation from a friend and being able to just go click. I'm going to buy that book and I'm going to read it and it's going to change my life. Coffee. Out. Coffee dates.
Yep.
I am not picky. This could be a coffee date with anyone. I do really love it with you, but I don't get to do that very often. I would like to do it more. Let's try to do that more.
Great. Let's do it. Here, why don't we just turn this off and go now? See y'all. Bye. No, we'll finish the conversation first.
I like spending money on our health and healthy food. So like the kids I just took the kids to the dentist and it's like, I mean, it's not a blast to spend money on that, but it is something that it's like nice to not always be like, where are we going to get this money from? You know?
Yeah.
And just eating healthy food in general and not filling our bodies with garbage. I like going on dates with you a lot. See,
me too.
I wrote that on my list. I like eating out, like as a family.
Yeah.
And it's nice when we're like, what do we want for dinner? Oh, man, do you just want to order out? Like, I love when, I don't know. You're the main chef in the house, but for some reason, I always love it when you are the one that brings it up. I'm like, yes, Bob wants to eat out.
Okay, but just real quick caveat to that, or side note, would you like that if we did it every night? Would you be as excited about it?
No, I'd be bored by it.
Is that because we don't do it every night? It's a bit more special?
Yeah,
thing?
I mean, all these things, really.
Okay, I just wanted to check. Because, for some people listening, like every single night they eat out. We have friends who do not ever cook. Every single night they eat out.
No, we don't do that. So stuff for the kids. So we go to Target and they're like picking out a toy. It's just fun. I love it. I think it's so much fun. Travel and clothes.
Clothes.
I love buying clothes. It's just like a hobby.
Okay.
And so I just think it's fun.
All right, so
I like to spend money.
I want to read.
No one's surprised by that. Everyone's like, "Yep, check. We knew."
Okay, so I'm gonna.
I asked the kids. I was like, "Guys, what do I like to spend money on?"
You did.
I'm like, "Dad wants me to make a list of what do I like to spend money on," and I had already written like 7. I was like, "What do I like to spend money on?" And they're like, "Clothes." All 3 of them, clothes.
And you did.
I already had it on there. I was like, "I know, guys, it's already on there."
All right. Okay. So I want to read a little bit from this book called Retired Before Mom and Dad. It's written by a guy named Rob Berger. Really good book. But I want to read something out of one of his chapters in here that I thought was really good for this conversation.
Okay.
So it'll take me a minute or two, but bear with me. So he said, so it's a story. It's a story about 2 people, Don and Wendy. Okay. So they were acquaintances in college, occasionally taking the same classes. They didn't know each other well. And they went their separate ways after graduation. They both landed good jobs. So Don went to work for a large computer hardware company, while Wendy started at a smaller software firm. They each scored a $10,000 signing bonus and a $75,000 starting salary. The benefits were great too, with each company offering health insurance, paid time off, matching contributions, and a 401k plan. As if that weren't enough, they also had no student loans or other debt. They had their entire lives in front of them. And this is where their stories diverge. Okay? So they're starting off at the same foot, same opportunities and everything else. So Don used his signing bonus as a down payment on a brand new Series 5 Series BMW. He knew it was a splurge, but he had earned it. After 4 years of sacrifice in school, he was due. Besides, on his salary, he could easily afford the $500 a month monthly payments. Salesperson at the dealership helped him make the calculations and assured him he could afford the car. Salespeople are nice that way. Don was happy. Okay? So he did that, and he was happy. Okay? Wendy rewarded herself, too. She took the $10,000 bonus and invested it in a low-cost mutual fund. It felt good to know that through her hard work, she was able to begin building wealth for her future. She was proud in a good way of what she had accomplished, and this investment was a constant reminder of both her past accomplishments and future goals. As for her car, she continued to drive the beater with 100,000 miles on it that she had used in college. Wendy was happy. So they're both happy.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, Don moved into a very nice apartment about 20 miles from work. He considered living closer to work, but he could get a nicer place for the money further from the city. Besides, he reasoned the commute wouldn't be so bad in the Beamer. Okay? Like the car, the apartment was a splurge. The rent was $1,500 a month, but Don was confident he could make the payment easily given his salary. He was also confident that his salary would go up significantly over time. Don was happy with his choices. Now, Wendy moved close enough to work that she could walk. She shared a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 roommates, and her share of the rent was $700 a month. While the rent was more than she wanted to spend, she saved on car insurance, repairs, gas, because she was able to walk to work each day. In fact, she figured that she wouldn't need a car for a long time. She also avoided the headache and wasted time of a long commute. Wendy was really happy with her choices. Okay, so both of them are happy. Now, Don considered investing in his company's 401k, but chose not to. With the cost of the BMW and the rent, he didn't have a lot of money left over. Besides, he reasoned he was only 22 years old. He had plenty of time to save for retirement down the road, perhaps after he paid off his car. He was still happy. Now, Wendy didn't think twice about investing in her 401k. She immediately set up a monthly contribution that enabled her to save the maximum amount. Her employer matched these contributions dollar for dollar up to 6% of her salary. She was still happy.
She was happy.
Okay. Now, fast forward 20 years. Let's assume Wendy's decisions enable her to save 30% of her income each year, including the employer match. Don, on the other hand, doesn't save anything and goes more and more into debt. What do their financial lives look like 2 decades from now? Don is easy to diagnose. He has no savings and a mountain of debt. In this regard, he looks like the typical American, a blue pill. He lives a nice lifestyle, but he's on a hamster wheel, constantly hustling just to keep up with his financial obligations. And Wendy is a different story. By saving 30% of her 75% salary, she's built up quite a nest egg. Assuming a 9% return on her investments, Wendy has accumulated more than $1.3 million.
Wow.
And that's assuming no pay raises or increases in her savings. The point is not to admire the $1 million that Wendy has accumulated. The point is that Wendy is in control of her future. Don's future is dictated for him by the financial decisions that he's made.
Right.
That's not to say Don can't turn things around. He can, but he has a lot of work and some difficult decisions ahead of him. In contrast, Wendy can pursue whatever life purpose inspires her. If that means continuing to work for her company, she can do that, or she can start her own business or move to a different job or take a sabbatical. Don and Wendy are fictional. The question you have to ask is whether you want to live like Don or like Wendy.
Right. Well, and I would even take that a step further for us in being like, instead of her being in control, it is we can allow God to be in control.
Yeah.
Rather
we
than
can set ourselves up to be
the
used
debt to be in control
and to do bigger things,
right.
To write more zeros on the check. And that's what gets me excited about all this.
Right.
And so the point of sharing this story is that I think so often we forget the impact of some of these little decisions, and specifically around our happiness. Because again, coming back to the Mexican Fisherman story, like if Don would have taken that to heart, it's possible he would have made some different decisions, you know? And,
right.
And going back to like our lists that we wrote down, like I started after I wrote that list, just thinking, all right, what's not on my list? And one of them that wasn't on either of our lists was having a brand new car. Now, there's some people that's like, that is the thing. The most important thing to me is I want a brand new car, I want a shiny car, whatever.
Right.
And again, like we say all the time, we're not here to tell you how to spend your money. So
Right.
like if that's the thing that you find most important, you want to do that, then great. Like do your thing. But if it's not, then don't. Like that's the problem is
Right.
that so many of us find ourselves doing the thing that everyone else does just because everyone else around us is doing it. In college is another one of those things. It's like I grew up believing you have to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not going to be able to make any money. You're not going to blah, 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 blah. Like if we look at some of the most successful business people in all of America, like some of the biggest tech companies, like so many of their leaders did not go or finish college, you know? Another thing on my list was, or not on my list, was eating out every night. Again, like, and back to a story I talk about a lot, but early on, in my early 20s, I had a millionaire mentor who said there are two things Americans waste money on. It's food, eating out, and it's cars.
Yeah.
And he really painted this picture of Don and Wendy without so many words. And he basically said if most Americans had any idea the amount of impact that that could make on a financial life over 20 or 30 years, just by changing the decisions they make about what they drive and how often they eat out.
Yeah.
I don't have a boat on my list. I'd love a boat, but it's not on my list, you know. I don't have a Gucci wardrobe on my list. It's like, and I like dressing up. I like nice clothes just like anybody else, but it's not on my list. And so my point is, you can have friends around you who make you feel like you need to dress like this. You need to have this kind of wardrobe. You need to have a boat so we can all go to the boat, whatever. Every week we go do that. Or you need to be part of this country club so we can, you know, blah, blah, blah. And those are decisions that you have to make for yourself.
Right.
You have to decide what are the things that actually make me happy and how can I optimize for them. Because what's cool is when you go down our lists, like you can look at yours, but a lot of these things are not that expensive. Again, like my last one was Topo Chico. It's literally $1 a bottle, like brings me happiness and joy.
Yeah.
You know, going to this taco shop,
Flowers.
it costs me $10 and I can get some tacos and they make me happy. And
Books.
Peaches and buying a book and even vacations. It's like, in healthy moderation. Again, because it's not about like being a penny pincher and not spending on anything you actually enjoy. It's just being about strategic and intentional in it. You know, because again, like it's so easy to think, well, we'll go on vacations once we retire. Like, then we'll get to go, we'll buy a house at the beach, you know?
Right.
But I love this idea of bringing that into the now as much as possible, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, we do talk about this a lot where it's like, I think most people, when they hear that we talk about finances, they're like, oh, they're nervous for us to find out what they spend their money on. And our point is not to say don't spend money on anything. That's unrealistic in a Western society, don't you think? It's unrealistic. Yeah. But the point I think that we want to make is more, are you being intentional with what you're doing, or are you just like buying stuff because you think you're supposed to? Are you spending money on stuff that's unnecessary because you think you're supposed to? And have some foresight to the future.
Yeah.
Like it just makes sense.
Yeah. So there was a study that was done by a guy named Daniel Kahneman, okay, and found that emotional well-being increases with income up to about $75,000 a year. Okay. So we could say happiness to some extent increases as you get up to about $75,000 a year. But beyond that point, the studies show that income has little impact on your day-to-day happiness. So the point is, if you're making $75,000 and you jump up to $150,000, you're not going to be much happier, according to the data. Or even if it's $1 million, you're not going to be much happiness or much happier.
Much happier.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So that really means having your basic needs provided for.
Yeah.
And maybe a little extra.
Yeah.
So wild.
Yeah, obviously depends on where you live. Like that number, you know,
right.
would have to fluctuate. But but as an average, I don't know. I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
I would think it would be higher. I bet most people would.
Yeah. And I it might be increasing, but there was a study done a few years back. But
right.
So if money isn't the key to happiness, why do we keep on spending on the wrong things? Okay. So there's a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. I think I said hedonic. I don't know.
Hedonic?
I don't know. Whatever that
don't
is, adaptation. That when we experience something new and exciting, our happiness levels spike. Okay. But over time, we adapt to that experience and our happiness returns to its baseline.
Yeah.
And so whenever you get something new, it's so exciting. But this is what's so cool because, again, like you can buy a brand new house that'll cost you whatever. Like, let's just say to move, it might cost you $50,000 to move or something, after you're paying the commissions for selling your house or whatever the thing might be. Okay. And after, all those expenses, moving expenses and commissions and blah, 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 it costs you a lot of money to move. You find this brand new house. And yes, it's amazing. We're in this brand new house. It's awesome. And I love it. It's so fun. That happiness only lasts for a certain amount of time. But at the same time, me running out and buying tacos from my favorite taco joint provides a measure of happiness. And if you have to quantify that happiness, you could probably get the same amount of joy and happiness from going to the taco shop 10 times over 3 months as moving to a new house or buying a new car. Do you know what I'm saying? If you had to quantify happiness. And so that once because I remember reading an article about that concept and that idea. And once I don't know, saw that, I'm like, that's so fascinating because there's so many things that we spend a ton of money on that we think are going to bring us happiness. But because we adapt so quickly to them, it's just over and done. And in new cars especially, I feel like every time we've gotten a car, and not necessarily brand new, but just a new to us car, it's so exciting. But I feel like 3 weeks later, it's like, oh, it's just our car now. And it's not fun and new fresh anymore. And again,
and in some cases, we're like, I can't wait to get rid of this car.
Yeah.
It turns into that,
But there's so many things you could buy that are so much cheaper than that could possibly provide the same level of happiness and short-term joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're strategic about it,
Like another car. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just keep flipping them.
Yeah.
Every 3 weeks.
Yeah, and it's the same way when I get a new phone or a new computer or whatever, it's I'm kind of excited about it, but it's always fascinating how fast it just turns into the normal thing.
Yeah. For sure.
So anyway, lots of kind of random thoughts on
and just things to think about
today. Yeah. So I think kind of wrapping this up, one of the questions I just want to ask about, maybe kind of leaving to you, is, kind of pulling it back to where we were originally. This is Psalm 16:11. It said, "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." And so I'm all for, kind of some of this nerdiness that we're talking about of being strategic with spending less to get more happiness. But in the reality, in the grand scheme of all this, it's how can we get more time spent with Jesus? Because in his right hand are pleasures forevermore.
Yeah.
That's where the true joy comes in, whether we're in our worst environment, state, situation. I tell our kids this all the time. It's you can make any situation miserable or you can make it fun.
Yeah.
And it's the same way. We can be on, the best, most amazing vacation and make the entire thing miserable. We have the opportunity to do that.
I've never done that.
I know. Or we can just be in a bad situation. And I'm not saying this is easy, and I'm not, trying to speak to every situation, but I'm just saying we can be in bad situations and allow ourselves to go through it with Jesus, tethered to him, and really have deep joy. And you've told me multiple times how you've done that.
Yeah. I have, but also, we can just look at the Bible. It says that one of the fruit of the Spirit is joy, joy and peace, right? And so if we're always chasing the next thing, the eyes of man are never satisfied. And so if we're always chasing the next thing, it's because we're looking to the world to provide us something that is not ever supposed to come from the world. Yeah. It was never, the world wasn't created to fulfill those needs. And so we're just looking in the wrong place. And so if you're looking in the, if you think about that very, literally, if I send Bob to go get a Band-Aid and he goes in the refrigerator, he can search as long as he wants and he will never find it. You know what I mean? Like, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If we are searching for joy and for happiness and we are looking in the wrong place, like, it doesn't matter how long you look for it, you still won't find it.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of connecting this back to this series that we're doing and as to why this is important. If you take a look at your budget, where you're spending your money every month.
The budge.
And then compare that with your list that you made of your top 10 list of things that bring you the most joy. Like, what are you spending on in your budget that are things that it's like, this isn't the thing that are really bringing me the most joy, And that is really powerful because that can free up hundreds or thousands of dollars a month, and again, I talk about this a lot, but the fact that that having a brand new car isn't a top priority for us and it's more of an A to B thing has made such a significant, it just has propelled us forward financially because we've been able to buy cars with cash because we're not buying a $70,000 car every time.
Right.
And we're out of that car payment cycle. And so we have this extra money every month so that we can save up to buy a car with cash and or give to things that are important to us or whatever else.
Right.
And so anyway, so that's why this matters. That's how all this connects, is that by getting your top 10 list in line with your budget, right, you can see how this just frees up so much more money to do whatever God's put on your heart and whatever he has for you to do,
Right. Yeah,
so,
that's good.
My encouragement to you in terms of an action step now is to step back, ask some questions, about how you're doing this. Okay, look at your budget, look at where you're spending money, and then compare that to your top 10 list,
Right.
Because I want you to be living like Wendy, right? More like Wendy, less like Don.
We all want to live
right?
like Wendy.
Yeah, and again, like it's not, and I'm not saying, she's 22 years old, I'm not saying go get 3 roommates, if that's not your season of life and that's not what you want to do. But the point is, how can you be strategic?
Yeah.
In those decisions that you're making. So,
Amen. Love it.
Anyway, that's all for today. Be blessed, be blessing, and we'll see you next time.
I just learned about you last week. I purchased your book and read it in just a few days and have since ordered 5 more to give to others. This is what Jason and Megan said after reading our book.
That's awesome. Way to go, Jason and Megan. We love that. And if you enjoyed our book, you are welcome to do that and order 5 more for others as well. I would love to see that.
You can get it on Amazon, but we so believe that the church needs this message that if you can cover shipping, we'd love to cover the cost of the book and send you a free copy.
All you need to do is go to SeedTime.com/free to get yours.